Please welcome veteran DynamicsCon speaker, Michelle Serna. Today, she will be showcasing his session, Building a Power App with Dynamics 365 Business Central as a non-developer user. Please stick around after Michelle's session for a live Q&A.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining this cross-product session this morning on building a Power App with Dynamics 365 Business Central as a non-developer user. My name is Michelle Serna, and I'm the Director of Ideation Strategy at True North Dynamics. I began my career as a Dynamics GP end user, transitioned into a GP and Business Central consultant role, and then moved to become the Director of ERP, overseeing the teams of consultants, until a recent change where I now oversee the strategy and growth of our Dynamics practice. One of my favorite things to do is learn about new features and technology, which is what initially led me down this path of understanding how Power Apps could be valuable to all types of users. We're going to start off our session with a little bit of PowerPoint discussing how to get started with Power Apps, how you can integrate your Power Apps with various data sources, and move into some high-level tips and tricks before we dive into a live demo and build that Power App together. Let's get started. So what is a Power App? Well, Power App is a suite of apps, services, connectors, and a data platform that provides a rapid application development environment to build your custom apps for your business needs. With Power Apps, you can create apps that connect your data stored either in underlying data platform like Dataverse or in various online and on-premise data sources like SharePoint, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, SQL Server, or more. Let's talk about a few key features. First of all, ease of use. Power Apps offers a user-friendly interface with drag-and-drop functionality, making it accessible to users with varying levels of technical expertise. It also integrates seamlessly with other Microsoft services and a wide range of third-party applications. It's also very customizable. You can tailor your apps to meet your specific business requirements, making sure that they fit perfectly into your workflows. And lastly, it's mobile friendly, so you can build those Power Apps to be responsive on your mobile devices, tablets, and even your desktops. But do you need to be a developer to be able to build those Power Apps? The short answer is no, you don't have to be a developer to build a Power App, and here's why. First, there's low-code, no-code platform. They are designed to be low-code or no-code, which means that even if you have very little coding experience, you can still create powerful applications. I would say you don't even need any coding experience. I didn't when I got started. The intuitive user interface allows you to drag and drop different elements, configure various controls, and set up your workflows without writing a single line of code. You're looking more at things like formulas, very similar to how you operate inside of Excel. There's also a number of templates and samples that you can use to help out with that starting point. I love the templates to be able to get ideas, see how things are organized, and even how different app pages or screens are set up to be able to then dream up my very own. It uses something called PowerFX. So for those who want to add more functionality, Power Apps uses PowerFX. It's a very simple yet powerful formula language that's, like I said, similar to Excel. It makes it easier for users who are familiar with Excel to create more complex logic inside of that app. But most importantly, it's part of that Microsoft community. There's the Microsoft support. So tons of users in this community love sharing how they've learned and love to teach what they've learned along the way. There's a ton of resources available. Tutorials, forums, documentation. I learned how to do everything that I know on Power Apps simply through YouTube videos. What can they connect to? There's a ton of connectors. There is an incredibly versatile list of what you can connect to. Some of those are, first and foremost, Microsoft Dataverse. So the underlying data platform for your Power Apps is going to be running off of Dataverse. You can access any of those other Dataverse programs and Power Platform. It all integrates very seamlessly. SharePoint for me is a really big connector for Power Apps. The first 3 apps that I built were all based off of SharePoint lists. Microsoft 365, so things like Outlook, OneDrive, and Teams are all integrated to your Power Apps. You can think about how you can increase your productivity, streamline your workflows, enhance what you're doing every single day. Dynamics 365. So if you use something like Customer Service Hub or Project Operations, think about the fact that you can also create a Power App based off of that information. And then, of course, custom APIs. You can connect any of your custom APIs with your PowerApps connectors. It's a really, really powerful way to get that data into a way that you can utilize in other ways. So how do we get started? First, you got to start with how you can access your Power Apps. You're going to need access to it. And the great thing is that your Microsoft 365 subscriptions are most likely going to already give you the access to Power Apps. You're just going to go to make.powerapps.com and log in. If you don't have a subscription, you can sign up for a free trial, or you can reach out to any of your partners that manage your licenses, and they can give you the answers of how you can get that Power Apps access. Most of the time, you're already going to have access to the basic version. Some of those data connectors, like Business Central, require premium features of Power Apps. So again, if you have questions on if you have premium, reach out to your partner and they'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Now, your tips and tricks are going to lean into the how to get started. So I'll go ahead and move into that and just let you know, first and foremost, draw out your app on your paper first. Take out a notepad, take out a notebook, and plan out what you'd like your app to look like. But also think about how one screen is going to lead into the next for your app. Think about the flow of how your data is going to be moving, or how you want to confirm the data that you've entered and move throughout your application, getting access to each of your pages when you should. You're going to want to make sure there are no dead ends. You don't want to be stuck on a page without being able to get back to that home page. So plan out how you're going to be moving throughout. Don't be afraid to start with a template or a sample first. As I mentioned previously, they're a great way for seeing how things can be done and giving you ideas to dream up what's going to be ultimately the best application for you. My number one tip and trick is standardize your naming conventions. A lot of those formulas and the low code that you're using, we're going to reference different forms, pages, buttons. And if you've standardized your naming conventions while you're trying to write those formulas, it's going to make it a lot easier to know what it is that you're touching at any given time when you standardize that naming. Also, don't be afraid of search engines. Don't be afraid of reaching out to the community. We all were learning at one point in time too. We love answering questions and showing people how we know what we do. Check out YouTube. I learned all of my first apps, how to do them from YouTube videos alone. It's going to be a great resource for you. And lastly, ask Copilot. Whether you have Copilot in Edge, the Copilot application, or even in PowerApps, there's different Copilot engines inside of different various places. Check it out, see how it can help you. With that, let's go ahead and let's get started on that live demo. For example, today I want to build an app that's going to enter contacts that I meet at a conference or an event. Let's say these contacts have the potential to become leads. So I want to get them into Business Central so that I can use the relationship management module to add them to things like campaigns or hopefully quotes in the future. I'm going to start by going to make.powerapps.com and my page will load, allowing me to create a new app. Now, if I wanted to upload an image, I could do that. I would just need to name my Power App, select if I'd like to upload my own or a sample image, choose the file. So I just uploaded an image that I drew. And it's going to choose which format it suggests. This one, it's suggesting the phone format because of the image that I drew. Now from here, I'm going to have to select the type of object that this is. It tries to do the best in choosing them, but you can see it had a few off. It had the contacts label as a button, and my add new and my home weren't quite the right object type here. So I'm just adjusting those and choosing what I'd like to have these tagged as. I can even remove the tags. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to say if I want to connect it to a Dataverse table, that's because this will be a model-driven app, so I need Dataverse, but I don't want Dataverse in this case because I want to do a Business Central app. So I'll add it later so that you can see what this looks like. And it's going to take my drawing and it's going to try and turn that into the first screen of my app here. So the more drawings you have, the more screens it will create. So you can see here it has the different buttons and it tries to figure out what I was doing from that page. The more detailed you are on your drawing, the better these apps will turn out. I don't really want to do this type of nap though, so we're going to actually scratch that. We'll back up and we'll go back to that original create page, and we're going to choose blank app here. And for my blank app, I then want to choose a Canvas app. And I want to select a Canvas app because they can connect directly to Business Central. They're very customizable and flexible, as well as being mobile accessible. So I'm going to go ahead and name that app here, and that's going to be the name of my app that's going to be on my screen. And I want my format to be a tablet layout because it's ideal for the application I'd like to build, where I can have two different gallery pages. I'll show you what that means here shortly, next to one another. Now, once my app opens up here, I'm going to want to get that data source assigned. And I can see that I have Business Central Online and Business Central On Premises. So today we're going to focus on Business Central Online, and I'm adding that data table here. Now, what's loading up here is the actual list of companies that are available and environments available. And then once you've selected that, it's going to actually have the table list. You can scroll down and look through the tables. I know that I want to look at the contacts, so I'm just typing that into my search here. You can select more than one. It's really going to be up to you and what type of data you need. Now, once you've added that, it's going to be available under that data navigation pane. I'm opening up my tree view because this is my favorite view. It's where I can select all of my screens. There's different types of screens and templates, like I've mentioned earlier, that you can choose from. And there's a few that we'll use that we'll come back to. But one of my favorite things to do, like I mentioned, is I like to plan out the different formats and screens that I'm going to be using. And I'm very big on standardizing names. So I'm going to start off with screen and contact list page. And I'm going to think about the different screens that I'm going to be utilizing throughout my app. So not only am I going to have this list page, but I'm also going to be wanting the pages where I am adding a new contact, a screen where maybe I'm editing a contact that's existing. And then anytime you're adding records, you essentially are submitting them, you're saving them. And whenever you do that, I like to have a success screen saying like, yes, the action you tried to achieve has been achieved and it's done. We're saved. So I'm setting up those screens here. And you can see my naming convention is going to be very similar through them. I'm starting with it's a type of screen and then what the purpose of it is as well. So here I have, I actually use one of those templates for the successfully completed template. So it has everything I needed there. I'm just renaming it. Now, don't forget, you can utilize themes in here to help get different color schemes, make it look nice. So it's not just a plain white background. Really, it's up to you and what you'd like them to look like. I liked this one because of the nice muted colors. So now that we have those screens set up, I'm going to start building what I would like on this information. So I'm just going to do some housekeeping here. I'm going to title my page out. So I added in a text label and I'm adjusting my size. It's going to be just like any other Microsoft application where you can change your font size, your font color. All of that's going to be available for you very easily up on the top toolbar or even on the right-hand properties side. Now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say that this is a label and what the label is for. Again, we're going to want to keep that naming schema so that it's easy for us to see which different data types we are accessing throughout different formulas we have. Now, you can select your insert in two different ways. You can go to that plus sign on the left-hand navigation, or you can do the insert drop-down from the top. You'll find what your favorite is. And here I'm adding a gallery. Now, a gallery is essentially a list of information that you have. A vertical gallery is going to display your items in a list from top to bottom with space for information. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see I'm actually able to change that layout to different fields here. And the different fields can even be selected to go in different orders. So you'll have to play around to figure out, because they're named silly. This one says title 2, but it's actually the top. So you'll want to just come in here and play with the different fields that you prefer. I am putting in my company name, my contact name, and my contact email, as well as the image of the contact there. Now, once I have that, remember it's pointing to my data type of the contacts that we added from Business Central. Now, I am going to then set up my different gallery here, and I want to then be able to see additional information because I'm only seeing 3 pieces of data here, right? Company, contact, and email. There's a number of different types of data points on my contacts. So I want to actually create what's called a display form. It's going to be different than an edit form. Display form is doing exactly what it says. It's displaying data. It's a read-only list here, form that is perfect for showing details. So I'm going to position it on the right side of the gallery here for my screen layout. And now you can see it's blank here. We don't know what it's trying to display. So I actually want it to display whatever is selected from my gallery here. So if I come here, I can see that I have that screen name and it's Form Viewer 1. While we're here, I want to rename this. Again, keep everything really organized. You're going to see why that's really helpful here in just a moment. So we're going to get these named, do some housekeeping before we move on. I'm going to get that gallery renamed as well. Now, as you're renaming these, make sure you keep in mind that you're going to want to keep the different types in that beginning there. I can see that this is gallery versus the display form. You'll have edit forms or labels. Make sure we're naming those. Also, play with your fields. This is about learning and having fun. So click on your buttons. Make sure you're going through. You can see that you can align things. You can use Copilot. You can copy and paste things throughout here. So find out what starts working for you. Now, sometimes it's hard to select the different areas that you're working on. So always remember, you can go back in that list. Now, the reason I'm coming here into item is because that display form needs to know exactly what it's trying to display, right? So we know that we want to display information from the gallery and we want exactly what has been selected in the gallery. So that is why when you see me clicking here, it's updating that information on the right-hand side when I do gallery and the name of the gallery and dot selected. So when we select that line, it will update the display. Now, we don't need all these fields, so feel free to go through and update and delete whatever fields you want here. Have fun with the layout. Move things around. Remember, your properties on the right-hand side are going to give you a lot of different views and ways that you can organize this information. So go through and play with the different fields and information to make sure that it's formatted the way you'd like it to be. Now we also have here on this page the different fields, and you can see you can click through, but you can also navigate in that left-hand navigation panel here. Now I want to be able to add in the new contacts. I also want to be able to search for contacts. So in that insert, you also have access to things like icons, and you can scroll down through the list so you can see all the fun icons and things, but you can also search. So in my search here, I just did add. It's going to put in that big plus, and then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to look for here my edit pencil. So I can drag and drop on that edit pencil here, so I know how I can edit the different contacts that are already existing, resize them, put them where you'd like them to be. You can see when I'm using it in the gallery, then it's going to give me multiples, one for each line, right? So be careful when you are selecting those fields that you select them in the area that you'd like those to be, because I can't now drag that text input somewhere else. So I need to click out onto my background and then do my text input and put that where I'd like it. That text input is going to be the field for my search bar. So I'm going to be searching for different contacts, and it's going to search in that gallery list. So now I'm coming here and just showing you how you have the different shapes that are available, and you can use them in a bunch of different ways. So this rectangle, I'm actually going to make my screen look a little bit differently. I'm going to start defining some sections here. Now there's ways that you can do different containers. That's for a whole different session, but just know that there's other ways that you can do it to define these different sections screens. But for me, as a beginning user, I really found just utilizing tools that I'm familiar with from things like PowerPoint, Word, Excel, it carried through to these Power Apps. You don't have to get fancy, but you can still make it look really professional and really nice. So just with that, I have things like a add new button, an edit button, and then I can create that search. So let's now go to that add new. And, I'm not sure which one it is, but I can see when I select it, I can come here. It's made it bold around the outside, and I can rename that icon add new. That text input, it's going to highlight when I select it. So I can come here and do text input and contact search. Now that's one we're going to be utilizing in a little bit, so you'll want to remember that one. And then we'll rename this icon here. And remember, it's inside of our gallery, so we find it in our gallery list, and we will rename that icon and edit our contact. See how easy it is to find what you're looking for when you've created those naming schemas. Now we'll start off with that search button here. And now the on select section is when I select this button, when I push it, I want something to happen. I want to navigate. And where do I want to navigate? I want to navigate to that screen that we created called Add Contact. And I know exactly which screen it is because I've named it. I don't have to remember screen 1, screen 3, screen 4. I know it's the Add Contact screen. Now on this button, I want to do the same. You can see it says select parent. That's because it's in a gallery, so it put that for us. Anytime you need to add on your action, use that colon, that semicolon there. And I want to navigate to my screen where I'm editing that contact. So you're just going to start typing. Now you can see when you start typing, it's going to start filling things in for you. It's going to be really handy. So if you don't see things automatically populating, you know that you are not doing it correctly because it will do it for you. The other option is that you can just do your edit form there on the right-hand side, but we did a display form, not an edit form. Remember that display forms are read only. So if you wanted to be able to edit on this page and not navigate somewhere else, you'll put in an edit form here. And then when you click your button, it will allow you to edit the form next to you rather than just read it. So you'll see it's not filling in, and that's because that doesn't exist, right? That edit form doesn't exist. But I like going to another page so that it's very clear. One page is for reading, one page is for changing, and I don't have any accidental changes. So I've set up my two buttons. I have left here my search. And just to make it really obvious, you can go into that default text there and you can fill in search for contact. And if you don't want default text there, you don't want to backspace it, you can do a hint instead if you really wanted to, instead of that default. Now, when I come to this screen, I'm going to want to insert that edit form. Now, our edit form is going to be where we can change information, and it's different than that display because it is going to be something that isn't read only. Now, I know that it's called an edit form, but we can also make it add new. So we'll show you here as soon as we get that form. You can see I'm struggling getting the form selected. Remember, you can go back into that left pane navigation and select the form that you are trying to change. You can also come onto other pages if you like the format and the size. You can copy and paste that there. So you can go in and copy all of those and you can change it, add new contacts. So it's really going to be whatever is easiest for your process here. Now I can even come in and add in a little home. So if you want to make sure that you aren't dead-ended at a page, you can always add in that home button here. And you are going to want to utilize that home button or other buttons. You can even do a back button to take you where you'd like to be able to always start. Now, I am going to want to use my contact list page as my home, so I'm putting in here to navigate to that contact list page. That's all I have to do for that button. Now, whenever I click it, it's going to take me back to that beginning page. I'm going to get rid of some of these fields that I just don't need. That ID is going to be a GUID that is saved on the background. I also don't really care about this privacy blocked. And once I enter that information, I'm going to want to make sure that it's getting to Business Central. And before I do that, I need to rename that form so I can easily find it. And it's an edit form, and I'm adding a new contact. So we'll just do some housekeeping and update our icons and our labels and our forms here to make sure we stay organized throughout this process. In the first couple of apps that I built, I didn't stay organized. You'll see at the end when I show them to you, it gets really confusing and you have a lot of work to catch up on. We're going to add in our first button here. Now that button is going to come in, and this is going to be how we're going to save this information. So I'm going to drag it on, find where it lines up with my little home, and I'm going to choose to call that save. Now, on select, it's going to be just like if we were clicking that home, but instead of moving somewhere, I actually want to do what's called a submit form. And that means that I'm going to save that form. I'm going to submit my information back to Business Central. And I'm going to choose my edit form. Now, there's a few things that I want to do to make sure that this information is being created effectively, being saved effectively. So I'm going to first go into default mode here, and I'm not actually editing. I'm creating a new one. So I'm going to change that from edit to new. Now I can create a new contact. I'm also going to navigate down to item, and I'm going to fill in a value so that I can default different values in. So for example, if I were defaulting in information from my contact table, like my contact number, I could do that as well. So don't forget, you can click that Copilot at any point in time to give you tips and tricks and hints. Now, the last I'm putting here is on success. This is just my preference. If a submission is successful, I would like it to reset my form. And the reason why is because the next time I go to add a new contact, I don't want it to be filled out already, right? I want it to have cleared out that form so it's ready for the next one. So I'm going to say reset my form on success here. Now, the last thing that I want to do, I've thought about my home button, I have my save button, but when I submit that form, remember we put in here that success page. So we need a second step. First thing to a second step is a semicolon here. And then I'm going to navigate to that page where I am going to say my submission has been successful. Okay, now you can either keep everything on one line or you can do 2 lines. That area will expand out for you. Okay, now we also have here the edit contact. So that would be for an existing contact. If we were putting existing versus new, it's going to be very similar. So here's a piece that's going to be really a personal process for you. You can, if you build something that's very similar, you can just copy that page and then make some changes to it. So here you see that I'm duplicating one of my screens. It's going to duplicate everything that's on that screen. And now when you look at the naming, it's going to add _1 to each of those. So you can either come in here and rename all of those things to remove your underscores and rename them, or if you prefer to start fresh, then you can just go into copy this one field that I like because I have the right size, and then you can go into your new screen and you can just start adding everything by hand and adjusting things, copying and pasting little pieces that you want. It's really going to be completely about preference and what's easiest for you. The hardest part about duplicating is remembering to go in and change all your pieces, remembering to change your naming schema on them, remembering to go into things like your on select or your item or your default mode so that you are updating it to whatever your next task is for that new screen. So I'm just coming in here and I'm just adding it by hand because it's relatively simple, right? I've got a label, I have an edit form, I have a home button, and I have a save button. So not too much for me to add. So I can come here, I can add that home button, drag it over there. I can go in and I can insert in my next edit form, and I can connect my data source. I can move that form around. You can see here I'm moving it. You can add your data source really at any time. I've tried doing apps all different ways each time I build an app, so I can try and learn what is the best process for me. So there was one time where I didn't add any of the data sources until the end. I built out my screens first. That was okay, but I ended up getting confused in the end of which data source I needed where because I had more than one. So you'll want to find out whatever process works best for you. So I'm coming in here and doing my housekeeping, updating the names of my fields to make sure that I stay clean and organized throughout this process. So after we get our edit form in there, our icon named, I'm going to just get rid of some of my fields and it's going to reorganize for me. So now what I'm doing here is I'm going in to update this edit form. making sure that we have our item. And now this item is actually going to be pointing to the gallery that we were on before, right? Remember how in the beginning we had our display form for that gallery of whatever we were viewing? Now when we navigate to this page from our gallery, we want that information to carry over whatever was selected when we pushed our edit button. So here you can see then the information populated once I filled in edit, and we're just putting our save button in, updating our navigate for our home button, making sure we aren't stuck on any of these pages. That's going to be our main concern as we go through. And you'll see here, once we start testing our app, that we want to start clicking all of these buttons and going through each one to make sure that they are doing exactly what we are expecting them to. Now I'm just carrying out that theme throughout the rest of my application here, making it feel like it's put together so that when users are in here, it's a cohesive feeling. And very easy for you to carry out that theme throughout when you just start copying and pasting. You can also start out with base screens where all you have is things like your home button and those rectangles and your save buttons, and you can just copy it over and over before you add in things like your forms. It's going to be all kind of down to user preference as you're going through these. Just adjusting here. This is why you want to draw out your formatting ahead of time, because if you didn't know which buttons you wanted or needed in different areas, then you can really start spending tons and tons of time on the different formatting as you're going throughout. So having a cohesive plan in the beginning is going to be really helpful. Double checking your buttons here. So we saw that I had that save button. I didn't put in my submit form. And then we also want to navigate back to that success. So we're just putting all of our last pieces together before hopping back to our home page and handling our last search for. So the search for is essentially, when you're searching, just a filter on the different data that you have, right? So we are not actually doing much else to this button here. You can see I'm putting in that hint here, but we're not doing much else for this button itself, or sorry, text input itself. All of the work is going to be done on that gallery list page and pointing back to this text input. So when I'm coming here, I'm going to select that gallery and I am going to go to that item. And right now it's just pointing to my contacts table, but I want to filter that contacts table by whatever value I've put into my text input. So I'm filling in filter here and I'm choosing the table. And this is going to be like your Excel formula where it gives you the hints of the next steps. Now I'm saying that I want on that text input for the contact search, I'm looking at the name and I'm looking at the company name, the display name and company name. Now, as I'm going through here, you're going to see that I'm starting to get that squiggly line. That means something isn't quite right. Now, when I'm searching for things, I need to make sure that I'm putting the data type. So this is a text field, so I'm just putting .text here on the end to make sure that I'm saying I'm looking for text in a text field. Okay, it will tell you if it's not formatted correctly. I also want to be able to search for the company name. So again, we want to put that text input contact search .text in the company name. So all of our fields are going to fill in for us. Now, the way that I'm learning how to do these filters and things, YouTube, Copilot, ask Copilot, how do I do a search for my contact list? What formula should I do? It's going to give it to you. Okay, so now we can see I'm just doing a quick save to make sure. Remember, save often. You don't want to lose your work. I'm going to that play button. That play button is how I'm going to test things out. So I'm coming here, the search for contact. Now when it's blank, it's going to populate everything and I can start looking for specific contacts in here. So here's Helen. I see Helen in 2 different places. I can come here and I can edit. You can see it brought in Helen's information from the page that I had previously. I want to change this to street and then do my save. I can see this was successfully completed, but oh no, I'm trapped. How do I get out? This is one of those dead ends that I was talking to you about. I have no way to move forward from this spot here. So I need to make sure that I'm adding in that home button. Okay, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to type in home and I'm going to bring this guy in and I'm going to do my navigate to my contact list page. So now we're going to be adding in that navigate back to that list page here, and we're going to save and replay. So I'm going to hop back home. We can see that we're now able to add that new contact. I'll just fill in that display name so that you can see I can fill in a field here, and I can populate that company name or any of the fields that you need to. You can set them as required as part of those properties, and it was successfully completed. So you're really going to want to make sure that you're testing out each new feature. Use your search bar, try adding a new lead, try editing a contact that was already there, making sure that it works the way that you need it to. If something doesn't work as expected, make sure you're double checking the formulas in the property of each of your elements. So let's take a look at the first 3 apps that I ever built, just so you can see kind of what you can do. The first truly was the first one I ever built. It went through a lot of iterations. A lot of bumps and bruises to get where it is. And I haven't gone back to change it over time just because I like to go back and see kind of what it has. But this was the steps counter. So I kept having to add things over and over because I just didn't think of them the first time. So you'll see I didn't really have many naming schemas. I started with the screens, but not the buttons or the icons. The next one was for a hydration challenge. We did these as part of Culture Club at the company I work for. It was a lot of fun trying to figure out how to build these with something else I'm passionate about with the culture of our company. And so you can see here I learned to name those buttons, to name the icons and the images. I structured it a little bit differently. I had a more robust theme. I brought in the blues with the hydration challenge, so things just kind of all connected. I even got to where I had kind of about the challenge. I had links to other pages, and some of these were even hyperlinks to outside web sources and web pages to make sure that people were getting information that tied the whole theme together. Now, the last one was the one that gave me the most grief, just because it was the most kind of the low code that I had done. This was the last one I did of 2023. It was a fall themed bingo. So rather than an entry type challenge, the other 2 apps were definitely very low code, but this one was only 4 pages, which is a lot less than the others, but more of that code is kind of hiding behind some of these properties. So the first time that someone logged in to play bingo, it was analyzing if that username existed in a list. And if it didn't, then it was actually going in. The patch is creating values. So it was adding bingo squares, essentially, and images assigned to those squares to those individual users. That way, when users came in to play bingo, they had an individual bingo card. It wasn't one for the entire company. It was one per person. So it was connected also to their Azure AD to have them log in. Now, when you selected those different bingo squares, it was actually going to be asking you for an image. So here you add your photo, you selected your photo of you going to that football game, you submit that bingo job, and that was almost your dauber image inside of that bingo card. So as you collected those different images, it replaced the ones that were in that original patch. And once you had met bingo, you pushed bingo and said, yay, and it brought you right back so you could keep playing your bingo card. So this one had more code, but again, as you saw, it was just kind of the same code over and over. I just copied and pasted that in. One of my favorite ways to actually utilize these apps is inside of Teams. So we have a challenge section here where we have different tabs with those different apps. So the apps that you just saw in the different make.powerapps.com can look like this once they are an app that has been deployed to your different environment. You're going to want to make sure you publish them out and share them with different people. The thing that all 3 of these apps have in common is that they're built upon one type of data source, a SharePoint list. I use the SharePoint list to store all of this data and organize it to be used for all of these different types of apps that we were doing. It's a really great way to make a simple app, especially for beginners that don't know how to do typical development and code. But it's very, very powerful, as you can see, and you can get as creative as you want to be. I appreciate you all joining me today, and I'm glad that you've came along on the journey with me to take a look at how to build a Power App with Business Central as a non-development user. If you have any questions, we do have time for a Q&A, and please also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session. I do see that we have a few questions. Feel free to send them on over as well. So my first question that I see here is, where do users typically access these apps? And there's a few different places that you can access these. I showed in my recording there that I actually really like Teams. If you created a Teams channel, you're able to link in your Power Apps right through Teams and then just select which app you'd like to join in. You'll have to share out that app with the users. So they won't be able to see it unless it's been shared with them. And I also have the app on my cell phone. So on my cell phone, I have an Apple phone. It works on Android. You'll just go to the App Store and you can download PowerApps, and you'll connect with your Azure AD login. All of the users will be able to add in that way. And you'll just download that app. And again, any apps that have been published out to them, they'll be able to see. You can also download that app to your computer as well. So it's accessible on all of the different devices that you're used to using with Business Central as well. Another question I see here, can the approval process be added to the conference contact app example? So for example, before saving or submitting the new contact to BC, add a request to the approve function. The apps are fully functional with your Power Automate processes. So if you've created a Power Automate approval process, you can integrate it right there in your app so that you can have that app approval process. The way that your data is shared between your Power App and Business Central is going to kind of help define this process as well. Because you can also have things go into, say, a holding table if you wanted it to be reviewed and not necessarily a formal approval process. So if you wanted it to go to a specific table, and then that table is reflected in a page in your Power App, and only specific users have access to that page or to be able to approve a function before the data is sent into Business Central, you can do that as well. That would also limit the amount of users that are writing data to Business Central. So it changes the type of user that they need to have inside of Business Central, because whatever data is being sent to BC, the reflective licensing needs to be assigned in Business Central. So if it's a read-only user, they can't send write data to Business Central. If it's a full user, they can. So you'll want to, again, map out that process that you have and the different types of users that should be sending or receiving your data. Hopefully that answers your question. Let me know if it didn't. Next question I have, how do you initiate the apps? So you'll always want to make sure that you're publishing out your app. Inside of the make.powerapps.com, on the top right-hand side, you'll see publish. And that's what's going to be sending out that app to be a public-facing application rather than just one you're building or testing. You also need to share it to your end users who are accessing it as well. Next question I see, do end users need to have PowerApps license in order to use these forms and apps? Yes, you will need to have some sort of license. There are different levels of licensing. So depending on what your connector is, you'll need to have a license assigned to you. But they're relatively inexpensive, your PowerApps licenses. And definitely reach out to your partner that you receive your licenses from for pricing and information about what licenses are required. But it will kind of depend on what connectors and applications and how many apps you have as well. Because if you only have one app, then it will be a different tier than if you have more than one that people are accessing. Let's see here. Can you connect a Power App to NetStock? Is NetStock a third party or ISV? I believe it is. It depends. You can connect Power Apps to a lot of different things, especially if they have open API. So I would say specifically look at the API, and if you have a partner you're working with, then they can help you figure out how to get connected. If you don't have one, I'm always happy to tinker. I love pushing buttons. So you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to look into NetStock's API with you to see how you can connect. They may have built a connector as well. So definitely a great question to ask if that's an individual ISV. Thinking of how I can build a forecasting app for our sales team. Ooh, a lot of fun. You can also utilize Power BI. as well. So if you saw when I went into the app for a couple of those apps that I built, I integrated Power BI with those applications. So you can point to many different data sources that Power BI was actually specifically looking at a SharePoint list worth of data, and I built a Power BI off of that. You can connect your Power BI to Business Central if you have a third party like customer engagement, or let's say SalesPad or anything else that has your sales data out there that you'd like to bring in. You can connect Power BI there. You can build your forecasting with Power BI. You can build your forecasting with your PowerApp. You can have it do different types of scenarios. You can even use the forecasting in BC and bring that in. So there's a lot of availability that you can bring into these Power Apps. Do you recommend resources like Power in a Day and PowerApp? If you're referring to the like dashboards in a day or Power Apps in a Day through Microsoft, absolutely. I would take advantage of any training that you can get. Training is a really powerful way to get started because, like you said, it's in a day. So if you can get even your basic knowledge that you have in a day from those different resources, I would say take it if you can get it. The worst thing that happens is that you got to spend a day learning what other people are willing to offer in their environments there. If integrating with Business Central, will users get the same error message they would get in Business Central if they did something wrong, i.e. entering a manual number in a number field where the number series? Not necessarily the exact same error messages because the error messages are happening inside of Business Central. So there's different ways that you can build in error logging that will tell you what your error messages are. And I would always say that you're going to want to troubleshoot the process in both places. So if you're building an app, always start with doing that process manually in Business Central, confirming what is your required data, notating which fields you want to enter or need to enter, and taking that back into your app. It's going to help you troubleshoot a little bit easier. You'll still get an error log from PowerApps. It'll show up as a red bar at the top, but your error messages may be a little bit different than what you're used to seeing in Business Central. How do you know if it was successful? I'm not sure if that was for this presentation or the one right before. When you submitted a contact to BC. So it should work unless you get an error message, but you can also log into Business Central while you're doing your testing to be sure that that record showed up. It should show up in line, in timing. So I would say during your original testing, make sure you do that. But you also should have seen that we got that successful screen on there. That screen is only going to be navigated to if it was a successful pass. So if it was a failure to pass, then it wouldn't navigate on to the next step. You would get an error on that screen before moving on. Always testing. Testing is the most important part of development. How much time should a person spend on the architecture plan for the app and how detailed? I'm going to say that's based on your personality. So I'm a very detail-oriented person. I like having things mapped out, which is why my first app was so difficult for me, because I created kind of my goal first. I created the entry screen when that was the step entry. I created my entry screen first, and then I had to go back and plan how people were going to get there. So for me, I had a little notebook with the page drawn up, all of the different fields on there, and then I had notes on the different fields of what they would lead to when I clicked the button. For me, that was successful. But again, I'm a very detail-oriented person, and when I'm dreaming up my grandiose ideas, I prefer to have architectured plans laid out for me. So then once I had thought through that process and I went into my Power App, I was much more streamlined because I already knew what I was building. So I knew which pages I could copy to just put in place for the next page. I knew exactly what buttons I was building, and that probably reflected in how I was entering in that Power App when we were together, because I knew exactly what buttons I was entering in when and what they were doing. And I had my essential checklist for me. If you're more of a free spirit who likes to jump around and see where it takes you, you don't have to do that architecture. But it all kind of is going to depend on that personality that you have and how you like to work through things. I was changing the default mode to new or edit with a button click to use the same edit form for both functions. Do you recommend against this and use two screens as you did in the demo? You don't have to. In one of my apps, I had my gallery list page on my left-hand side, and I had an edit form on the right-hand side. And I actually, when I pushed my little pencil to edit, then it made the fields on the left-hand side editable. It's really going to depend on if you want to leave a screen to go somewhere to make changes. The reason why I showed that that way was because I had feedback on one of them that someone accidentally clicked the pencil and changed their entry and didn't mean to change that entry. So if you have users who are not as technically savvy, or you're working on a smaller phone rather than a big computer screen, remember that you can use multiple screens. So then you're breaking up how tiny your screen is going to be for someone when they're clicking in with their fingers, not on a computer or a tablet. It's going to be all about what type of end user you are catering to and the types of devices you're expecting people to be using for those processes. I may have taken up all of my time with questions, but I think we've run out of questions. Again, if anyone has any remaining questions or just likes to push buttons and see what happens, I love to tinker. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to show you. I'm not a developer, never have been. I don't know how to write code. So all of this is coming from wonderful YouTube videos and great resources throughout the community who are happy sharing the different tools that they use and processes that they've developed. So I'm happy to pass on what I've learned from the community on to others. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you guys so much for all of the wonderful questions. I appreciate you.